when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Went through the woods and forest glades, I wander and hear the birds sing sweetly through the trees. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and hear the brook and feel the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou
My grandmother had scars on her shoulders, thin, long lines at the base of her neck. My grandfather had similar scars on his back. "Who hurt you?" I would ask him. It was a long time ago, they replied, looking away so that I would not ask more. My grandparents had been forcibly removed from their families and sent to Indian boarding schools. My grandfather came from South Dakota and my grandmother from southeastern Alaska. They were sent to Pennsylvania, Carlisle Indian School. Children from over 300 nations walked through the gates of Carlisle. They were forbidden to speak their tribal languages or refer to their cultures. The children from the plains had long hair worn as an honor to God. It was cut only when a family member had died. Within an hour of arriving at the school, their hair was cut, and the children began to cry, certain that their family members were dead. The boarding schools took away their spiritual names given to them at birth and gave them English names that they could not pronounce. They taught them to read English by reading the Bible. And when they accidentally spoke in their tribal languages, the same people who taught them to read the Bible beat them with sticks, leaving scars for life. My father was a native person, Oglala Lakota and Tlingit. My mother was Scottish with beautiful auburn hair, and our home was a safe place, full of love and joy. But leaving home was not always safe for us. My aunt, who was a midwife, was shot in the head while leaving the reservation to deliver a baby. Most Indian homicides where I was raised were never investigated. My family put a small white cross at the side of the road. Most people, I suppose, thought it was the scene of an alcohol-related accident and said, "Another drunken Indian." I remember riding in the back of our truck to go to church. We stopped to buy gas. The gas station had a sign in the window that said, "No Indians and dogs allowed." My father put a bottle of Coca-Cola on the counter for my grandmother and a carton of chocolate milk for me. The gas station man said, "We don't serve Indians." My father, who had been a football player in college, stood quietly for a moment and then said, "Thank you," and turned to leave. As we were leaving, a man picked up a rock and threw it at the truck, striking me near the right eye. I remember the blood running down my face as we drove the 30 miles to the Indian clinic. There was a hospital 2 blocks away from the station, but they did not treat Native people. That night, my grandmother came into the room that I shared with 3 of my brothers. She had used the dream catcher often to tell me about God. She spoke of the hoop being God and how we were strong because of the strength of God. She pointed to each knot on the hoop and said that this was a person to whom God had connected us and how each of us was important to the whole. This night she thought long before she raised her head to speak. Sometimes people do not know that all God has made is sacred, she began. Sometimes when God brings them into contact, really into relationship with someone they fear, for even a brief moment, they react with anger. She paused. But we must remember that God has also brought us into relationship with them. "What do we do, grandmother?" I asked. "We give away," she said simply. "We give away our lives." December moons are never alone. This one, surrounded by ice crystals, embraced the snow with its second-hand light and coldly shone down on the 2 of us. My grandmother always wore moccasins. With hardly a sound, they made rounded snow hugs impressed into the drifts. "How much farther?" I asked, holding on to her coat. "Not far," she said softly. "Not far." I wondered if the trees remembered us, remembered that months before we had walked this way. Did they recall that an old woman and a small child had been accosted by 3 drunken youths? That they had called us names too hurtful to remember? Did the trees know that they had taken our coats and hats? Did the moon remember that they had taken my grandmother's moccasins? Would they remember our bloody faces? Would they know that my grandmother had walked home barefoot in the snow and that frostbite took 2 toes? I watched her over the next few weeks as she was working in her tiny house. She was a master with beads. Within her tiny house, she sat beading 3 beautiful pairs of moccasins with faceted Czechoslovakian beads so small they could hardly be seen. She beaded in shades of blue, red, yellow, and white. She beaded the tops and then the sides until even the bottoms were covered and they caught the light and sent it back again. On Christmas Eve, she wrapped them in the only paper that she had, and together we walked out into the snow. Pausing at the top of a low hill, she prayed quietly, her shoulders bent and head down. I could not control the pounding of my heart. "Why are we here?" I asked. "Why were we going to see them on Christmas Eve?" She paused for a moment and pulled her shoulders back. "We're doing God's work," she said quietly, and began walking toward a small house and barn. A door was opened by a large, imposing man. I remember that behind him was a juniper tree covered in Christmas lights. "I have a small present for your sons," my grandmother began. "May I give them?" She handed each a package carefully wrapped, and to each she said, "I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas. God bless you." The room was quiet. 3 pairs of moccasins lay in 3 sets of hands. Covered in faceted beads of white and red, blue and yellow, they caught the light of the cabin like the snow caught the light of the moon.